Hey, beautiful people.
Hello, everyone. It's Mr. E live from the River House with Miracle Meghan.
Good to see you guys. Hope you've been having a great day. And we'll see if anyone hops on here because kind of changed the time last minute.
That's right.
I mean, we knew what time it had been changed to for a little bit, but didn't really let you guys know.
While you do that, I'll bring people, Meghan, where we are in the lunar cycle. We are 2 days before a super full Scorpio moon.
Yeah, super moon.
That's right.
Scorpio.
Which puts us at the very end of I didn't see it coming, or did not see it coming. And this is the part of the lunar cycle, the phase of the lunar cycle where consciousness has no other recourse but to disturb your peace of mind a little bit. Maybe send something that you didn't know was coming in front of you and say, here, deal with this. You've asked for peace, you've asked for love, you've asked for success, you've asked for partnership, you've asked for all these things when you set your new moon intentions. And so now what is in the way of you realizing that is going to be kind of disturbed and give you something to look at so that the moon can then do its job in the next phase, which is to give you the full illumination of truth, and then you have an opportunity to let something go.
Yeah, and so it can show up in one of two ways, which is didn't see it coming or didn't I see that coming. So it's like, that's how much are we tapped in to what it is that we're really intending to do, and how much resistance is coming up, and what are we becoming aware of in preparation for the full moon, which is illumination of the truth. And so this is kind of the time where there might be a disturbance that challenges clarity, and then the clarity will come much more clearly in the upcoming days. When does the full moon window begin?
It officially begins tonight. So,
okay.
Yeah, we're right on the cusp of it. It's a 48-hour window on both sides of the full moon, which I believe is Monday night about 10 o'clock Colorado time. And it's and with Scorpio, you know, the on the wheel, the scorpions, they are the secret keepers, and their mission in life is to prove that sex is love.
Well, there's a lot of other things about Scorpio too. Well, there's a lot of other things.
Well, they're deep mystical creatures,
yeah.
and they really do care on a very deep level about society and about agreements and about ways things are, and so the shadow side of that often shows up, and that's kind of where they get their reputation is that is also the thing that, like all of us, you know, whatever we're here to teach, we've got to learn. That's sort of been a mainstay of what you and I have said since the very beginning, and so that's what the Scorpio full moon is really telling us. And there's some other astrological features that are also set up to bring buried secrets, bring family dynamics, bring old relationship patterns to the surface. So that's the real gift here, is that bringing things that we didn't notice before, or maybe we could feel before but we couldn't put our finger on, so that we can be more whole in ourselves and our perspective of the world.
Well, it's a huge time of transformation, because Scorpio also, you know, represents death and rebirth and transformation. Right. And so that's why a lot of times with Scorpio energy, it's classified as being intense. Yeah. And it's intense. It is intense. And in tarot, you know, I love to just kind of see how all of the different things link together. And so the major arcana that are associated with Scorpio are like death, and then also the Tower card. So, you know, the Tower card is from the Uranus planet, which is the planet of sudden change. Of course, Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, but that's in the 8th house. And so when we talk about the 8th house, that is absolutely talking about transformations. That's talking about huge revelations. That's talking about sudden change. And so that could be coming up for you as far as sudden changes that you're making in your life and in your experience, and things that are coming up for you. So has anything been coming up for you in this phase, which is didn't see it coming or didn't I see it coming?
Well, you know, we're all Scorpios in some way, shape, or form, most of us. I don't think you have any in your chart, though, do you?
I do. My Pluto's in Scorpio, actually, so it's a planet that rules Scorpio.
My Mars is in Scorpio, so the way I go after life and my intimate relationships, that's Scorpio. So, yeah, lots coming up here. We've had a tremendous change here in the last year at the River House and within my work, and it's all coming towards a beautiful, beautiful new place. And
I want to make sure they can hear you. Okay, so I'm going to scooch this up a little bit.
That's a good idea.
Oops. Okay, we'll see if that works. Okay.
Anyway, yeah, so lots of changes. Lots of beautiful, amazing things, you know. That's the challenge is when not the challenge, the opportunity is when a challenge comes across your world is to see how quickly can you see it as a gift. Mm-hmm. We know that in retrospect, sometimes many years later, we can see the gift of a situation that was really challenging to us. And so the opportunity, I feel like, for all of us to say, wait a minute, something big is happening. Something's being wrestled from me. All of a sudden my mind's in an illusion of a war almost, you know, or a grievance against myself or, you know, against someone else. And so it's a real opportunity to see very quickly, hey, this is an opportunity for love. This is an opportunity to see a bigger picture and get the gift.
Yeah, and I think, what are you laughing about?
Just how beautiful this all is. Yeah, I mean, because I was still finishing my food when we sat down and hit play, you know, and all of a sudden we're on camera in this amazing light together and have the opportunity to...
Ring light together.
Yeah.
We're in this amazing ring light together.
The ring light together, right.
Yeah, you know, it's, I think for me, and one of the reasons why we wanted to bring up the topic of betrayal is because a lot of times that can be some of the aspects of Scorpio, and there's a light and shadow to every sign, right? I mean, there's beautiful, empowering qualities to each one, and then there's specific challenges that might come up to each one, and I get a lot of people may not believe in astrology or whatever the case may be, but it does offer a language that if you learn how to use it can be really personally empowering and also help you in your relationships. I mean, I know learning about astrology has been really helpful for me in my relationships because I'm like, oh, that's just Pisces, you know, moody sometimes, you know, and it's like, but I don't take it personal as in like, oh, the way you're feeling about me is, I'm just like, oh, you're just, you know, this is the way you relate to your, you know, emotions and compared to me. And then because I know I'm an Aquarius, I know that it's going to look a lot different. And it's also a way, this similarly to how we're connecting with the moon, which you can absolutely do with astrology. You have your own moon sign, and that's going to be how you emotionally relate. That's going to be how you experience your emotions is through whatever sign your moon is in. And a lot of what we're talking about and we don't know is how we're relating to each other and to ourselves and giving opportunities for growth related to the moon. But there's other ways to connect to the earth and to the natural cycles of the earth through astrology as well, because there's all these different elements that make us a whole person.
Right.
So even if you don't believe in astrology, and you don't have to, but you do have to understand that you're a multifaceted person, which I'm sure you already do know, meaning that you have your emotional sense of self, you have the way that you take action in the world, that's going to be fire. You have the way that you think, that's going to be your air. And then you have the way that you care about resources and work and money, and that's going to show up in the earth signs. Mm. And so there's a lot of different ways to relate it, even if you don't specifically know or don't feel drawn to astrology.
Have you ever met anybody that actually gave astrology a fair shake that didn't come out on the other side and go, wow, there's actually really something here?
No, I haven't, but I do know.
I haven't either.
But I do know a lot of people who are like, I don't believe in that,
right.
You know, and it's very easy to believe in things you don't understand, and that's okay. One of my favorite lines in A Course in Miracles is, your understanding is not a powerful contribution to the truth. Mm. You know,
the truth is the truth.
The truth is the truth, yeah. And right. I'm not trying to say astrology is the truth. The question, recently I was doing another Course in Miracles study, and it was talking about, is reincarnation so? And what I loved about it is it said, it doesn't matter. You know, it said, it doesn't, the question is, what are you using it for? Mm. And that's what we really want to ask ourselves about all of our beliefs, whether it's political, whether it's spiritual, whether it's religious, whether it's about relationships. Yeah. The question is what am I using that belief for? And am I using it to separate myself from others? Am I using it to be divisive? Am I using it to be in conflict? Am I using it to be self-righteously angry? Because in that case, you're not using that belief in a way that's serving you.
Yeah.
And that's really all that's relevant about what you do or don't believe, is what are you using it for?
All right, this is a perfect segue into the conversation about betrayal, because what are your beliefs about betrayal, and how are you then using those beliefs to either find a new truth about relationships or to bolster perhaps a grievance that you've had about something that's happened in your life?
Yeah, and a lot of what we talk about is everybody's responsible and nobody's at fault.
Yeah.
And so you might find, I know I can look back in my past and find that I have some very specific patterns around the type of people I've attracted into my experience in a relationship. And so we might find that it's like, oh wow, this very similar kind of betrayal keeps coming up, this similar kind of hurt. And then the next question is everybody in the world like this? Or are we just going to overgeneralize and be like, all women are, all men are, all relationships are? Or do we really get to take a look at, how am I the common denominator here?
How am I the common denominator?
Because I choose to enter all those relationships. You know, you may not enter it in being like, oh, I sense that you are the same type of person who's going to enact the same sort of hurt. But it's, you know, these people are a reflection of our beliefs.
Yeah.
Always. Whether it's someone who's saying very disparaging comments about or to you, whether it's someone who's trying to isolate you from friends or hobbies or family, or whether it's someone who's validating you, appreciating you, being grateful for you, like that's a reflection of your beliefs about yourself.
Yeah.
So what else did you want to get into about betrayal?
Well, I mean, there's lots of ways you can look at it. You know, you can, if you get hurt and somebody in your mind has done you wrong, you know, I mean, the country music always comes to mind when I think about betrayal. You know, there's so many somebody done somebody wrong songs out there, and so many, there's such a cultural narrative around, you know, being hurt, you know, and being betrayed, and then suffering because of it, and then, you know, it's not fair, and the rest of it. But if you go all the way on the other side of the spectrum and look at the enlightened perspective, is that life is taking you down a hallway of choice points that all lead to your enlightenment. Every one of them does. And what enlightenment would suggest is that you've mastered the four agreements. And really, the one that is the most challenging for all of us, which is take nothing personal, that nothing is personal. And ultimately, I feel like that's the great gift of betrayal, is that you get to a certain point and you realize all this situation was a narrowing of choice points that puts you and someone else in a given situation that would awaken you to where your hurts were inside, so that you could let them go and be free from them. So it's not that the betrayal won't happen again. It's just that you, above and beyond needing it to teach you a lesson of suffering, and then you realize, oh, there is no such thing as betrayal. It was shame wearing a mask. And this comes from the gift is listening. Yeah. You know, what really happened is that the person that you were in relationship with wasn't comfortable enough sharing their truth. And so it wasn't that they meant to hurt you. It wasn't they meant to do anything. They got into a choice point situation where they didn't know how to communicate in the kind of integrity that you both maybe, or just one of you, felt like, you know, you ought to be in the integrity to do, you know.
Yeah, and it seems like it's the idea of betrayal, shame wearing a mask, could go in both directions.
Oh,
you know, that it's like the shame that's wearing a mask is for the person who's feeling as though they are being betrayed, and the person who is, you know, quote unquote, enacting the betrayal, right? And I think so often in the concept of feeling as though you've been betrayed, I don't know about you guys, this has just been my personal experience when I've gone through various circumstances that have been similar to, you know, the idea of betrayal, the concept of betrayal. But so often the biggest thing I had to resolve was anger at myself. There were, you know, and that was the thing, is I felt guilty because oftentimes there was a truth I was ignoring, There was conversations I wasn't initiating. There were questions I wasn't asking. There were boundaries I wasn't setting. There was, like clarity I didn't have within myself, not about anything to do with the other person. That set up those dynamics, or prolonged those dynamics, or kept going back to those dynamics. And so the biggest thing, as far as even letting the idea of betrayal go, had to be forgiving myself.
Yeah. And that's the shame that then creates the mask that you are not seeing the correct perception of life through, or it's the mask that somebody else is now wearing because your perception is having them wear that mask. I mean, that's the greatest sense of responsibility I think we can all take, is that people will treat us exactly like we train them to, or see them doing, and so
yeah, a quote from a story you used, I don't know how many episodes ago, but it's like, we get what we tolerate.
Oh, that's right, we get
what we tolerate.
Yeah. And so if somebody plays their hand over the course of a number of years, and you keep ignoring the cards that they're playing and the thing, and then all of a sudden there's this big betrayal, how can you possibly call yourself a victim to the situation when it was all around you all the time? And it really comes back to everyone is responsible, no one's at fault. But the responsible part is, can we each take 100% responsibility for the situation that we found ourselves in? If we're blaming somebody else, even 1%, 2%, it's not my fault, this is unfair, then we will never get the healing, Megan. Not ever.
Yeah.
Just never will get it. If somehow we can go deep down inside and say, wow, this doesn't feel very pleasant, and I'm not sure what just happened to me, but it feels like my whole world got pulled out from under me. As soon as we can get to that moment and say, okay, I'm here, I must have created it, I must be responsible somehow. My ego won't let me see it. God, show me how to see this situation clearly. And that's really where my practice, and your practice, and everybody's practice that we've been doing for years, or that we're starting today, or whatever it is, this is when it comes into play, because this is when we lean on our practice when things like this happen to us.
And just to be clear, we understand that there are certain situations that appear to be much more difficult to apply this to than others. And so by no means are we comparing a relationship where somebody maybe cheats on you, or tells a half-truth, or doesn't tell the truth at all, compared to someone who abused you as a child, right? It's not that we're saying those are the same things, but in terms of the solution, we are saying the same thing, or at least I don't want to speak for you in case you're like, ooh, I don't want to co-sign on that. But for example, yes.
Have I ever not co-signed on anything you put out there?
Maybe. You guys play the tape back. No, I'm just kidding. But my point with that is that at a certain point, whatever happened with parents, whatever happened with maybe an incident that happened in your childhood, we are not trying to say that you're 100% responsible in any sort of tangible sense for someone who was supposed to take care of you and didn't, or someone who abused you that was in a position of power when you were a dependent. That's not what we're saying. But at the same time, now that you are an adult, and now that you are empowered to begin living your own life, we are saying that you're 100% responsible for how you want to let that dictate the rest of your life. You are responsible for what meaning you want to give to that. You are responsible for if you allow that thing that happened to you as a child, or that traumatic incident or car accident that seems like, how the hell am I supposed to take 100% responsibility for this? The responsibility is to say, how am I going to let this move my life forward now? Am I going to use it in a means of self-destruction? Am I going to use it in a means of feeling like I have no worth? Am I going to use it as a means for delaying myself from my goals or my ambitions, or where I want to see my life go? Do I want to use this person as an excuse to say I can never heal, or I'm always going to have broken relationships because my dad wasn't there for me growing up? Like, that's what you're responsible for now.
I've got one little thing to add to that.
Yeah.
And this really helped me, because I was in a sexual relationship with a camp counselor at 11, 12, and 13, even before I knew what that was.
Yeah.
And so I didn't come clean on this one until 42. I mean, I tried multiple times when I was young. I could not find the right ground, the right situation, right person to do it. And so I carried this with me. And ultimately where I've come to is that 11-year-old child had the same divine nature as I have now, which is this spark on the inside. And that spark came to this lifetime with some lessons to learn. It had its own vibration. Yeah. And where if you can get beyond right and wrong, simply my spark collided with this other person's spark. And I think this opens up a great conversation about what is ego and what is God.
Yeah.
And you know, I didn't have enough awareness at that point to do anything differently. There was no other, you know, and so that's what I finally came to, was our sparks came together to learn something somehow, and it looked atrocious, and I carried it with me for a long time, and it was very hurtful, and it impacted all my relationships. And now at 54, I can look back on it and say, wow, in a weird way, it was one of the greatest things that could ever happen to me. It gave me the truth. It pointed me in a direction in my entire life to do the healing work that I needed to do. So that's how I take responsibility for it, is that I'm not using the mind and I'm not using the body. I'm using my divine nature to say this thing, that who I really am on the inside is untouchable. It can't be hurt, right? And so it's responsible for everything that's happened to me in every lifetime, and that gives me the opportunity then to serve a little bit larger mission in terms of my own personal development.
Well, yeah, and look at the growth and progress even just over the past 12 years.
Yeah.
To be from a place where you couldn't bring it up with those who you were in the closest of relationships with, right, to now be able to share it here on this, you know, Facebook Live. You know, it's like that's huge growth and progress, and shows that you're obviously no longer defining yourself by it or holding on to that same amount of shame that you had for however many decades. I mean, really, however many decades it had been. And so, and then the question is, well, then what are we using it for? And so if you're using it to recognize your own divine nature, if you're using it to even now move to a place of forgiveness and seeing the divinity in that person despite their behavior, what he's chosen to use the situation for is what's transforming the situation. It's not that the facts of the situation have changed, but the purpose and the meaning that you're giving to it has.
Right. All right. The purpose and the meaning, not the facts. Nothing has changed in terms of what happened.
Yeah.
And the storyline then becomes not relevant.
Yeah.
You know, the what happened becomes unrelevant. It's like, what is it catalyzing you to do? And, you know, that's a betrayal. You know, a young family sends their child off with this guy, you know.
Yeah.
And so that, and classically, in every way, it's a betrayal. And in some way, that has played out in many, many intimate relationships in my life. And, you know, to really then see that that vibration that I carried is still, you know, it somehow, some way, it's all a gift, and it keeps leading me to a greater truth, which is all love. You know, there was nothing ever to forgive, and we're all walking each other home in a strange way that we can't understand. But, you know, you and I have talked a lot about, because one thing that gives me peace is that everything that's happening to me is happening to me because of God, because of the play. And yet, you know, you and I speak about transparency, innocence, and commitment, how important that is. And really what betrayal is the absence of all three of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt.
And we can't build a structure to try not to get hurt, because it won't work. What we're doing is we're building a structure to put our energy of relationship or connectivity into, our intimacy into, partnership into, vision into, that is pure enough so that we are in alignment with the divine plan for our life, rather than the ego's will. And that's the really important thing, is that can you take the betrayal that happened to you in life and move yourself into God's will for your life, rather than stay stuck in a story and, quite frankly, continue to get abused by life, you know?
Yeah, and the irony of it is that when you actually really work on maintaining the container of innocence, transparency, and commitment, you are at much less risk of the idea of getting hurt. What's so interesting is that ego's goal, or and another word for ego is fear. Another word for ego is a sense of separated self. And so if we're in our egos within this relationship, what that means is we're within our own sense of separated self, which is, how am I going to protect myself? How am I going to manipulate the situation to get what I think I need? How am I going to make sure I don't lose what I want? When we get into the ego with relationships, it's all of a sudden we're not sharing what we call from A Course in Miracles the holy instant. And the holy instant is when we lose sight of separate interests. And isn't that what relationships are meant to be for? Whether it's a family member, whether it is a romantic partner, whether it's the people who are on your team at work. Hi, Anna. Great to see you. You know, the people who are on your team at work, why is it that we go in, what about my separate interests? Why is this person making more than me? I'm doing more work than them. You know, whatever the situation is, all of a sudden we've gone to our ego. We've gotten into our separated sense of self that says, I'm entitled to it. It's not the team anymore. And so if we're in a relationship, we're on a team. If we're in a family, we're in a team. If we're at work, we're on a team.
Right.
But when we get into ego, then that looks like I'm separated. Like I'm on my own team and now I'm in conflict or opposition or trying to get the most compared to everybody else.
And the ego is very complicated in the way it goes about things. It creates grievances, holds on to stories, creates problems when there are none. And love is actually relatively pretty simple. And this is very simple, very simple. And so, right, it's both things. It's both things are true, which is when you practice transparency, commitment, and innocence, your life changes because you attract somebody new that will reflect back to you those same things when you really, really do it, you know. And interestingly enough, sometimes you've got to make that transformation in a relationship that's not working for you so that that relationship can go away because they can no longer reflect sort of the deep inner hurt that you were doing before. If you're keeping secrets, it's really easy to stay in a dynamic where the other person's keeping secrets, and betrayal is absolutely what's going to happen. But if you can stand in your own truth, regardless of what's happening in a situation, ultimately the truth will find you, which is the really beautiful thing for everyone. Like no matter what kind of betrayal you've had, no matter how bad you perceive you've been hurt, you can clean your mirror, your internal mirror, and enjoy, you know, what God's will for is all, is happiness for all of us, you know.
Anna, I love that. This is a quote from A Course in Miracles. I was not angry with Judas because I knew I could not be betrayed. I knew I could not be betrayed. And so that, you know, is a quote from Christ in The Course in Miracles regarding the crucifixion, regarding the idea of betrayal. And that's the thing that we're trying to step into, is the idea of the fact that who you are is invulnerable. Your divine nature, I'm not talking about your body.
Right.
Yep,
Right.
I get it. Your body is vulnerable. You could go out into a car and something could happen. And we're talking about your divine nature. We're talking about your spirit is invulnerable. And the way that we want to make that manifest to the people in our lives is through joy. So if, you know, if somebody does something that's, the way that I can prove that I'm invulnerable, the way I can prove that I know that I'm a divine nature that's connected with God, is by making my joy manifest. And so often with betrayal, in order to maintain someone's guilt, you have to choose to be miserable. You have to choose to show up and to be closed off in that situation and show them your displeasure, whether you're actually physically in their presence or not. When we're trying to maintain guilt, we choose to suffer. Maintain another's guilt, we choose to suffer. So I want to let you know that what you did in my childhood was painful for me, even though I haven't seen you in 20 years, but I'm delaying my own progress. I'm not getting to where I want in life, and at the end of the day, I am the representation of your guilt. Ooh. Do you want to be the representation of the people in your life who you have grievances against? Do you want to be the representation of their guilt, or do you want to take the power back and say, this is my life, I want to prove that I've forgiven, not for you, but so that I can stop being the representation of your guilt?
Because your joy and happiness is already determined for you. All you have to do is accept the truth, which is the truth is what Anne said, which is we cannot be betrayed. To really get there on the inside and say, no, in this divine reality that we're in, on some level, I cannot be betrayed, and I want to find that truth within myself. And if you look diligently enough and ask God to help you and are determined in your practices, that truth is truth. And like you said earlier, the truth is suddenly the last thing standing because all the ego's games and whatnot collapse away, and there's no truth in the foundation of any of these false beliefs that someone could hurt another person.
I'm not a victim of the world I see.
Yeah.
I'm not a victim of the world I see.
There is no such thing as betrayal. She just didn't feel comfortable enough to tell you her truth. What truth have you prevented yourself from realizing? It's shame wearing a mask. It's shame wearing a mask. There is no such thing as betrayal. That's the poem that is in my book that I channeled, I guess, 6 or 7 years ago, and amazingly has served me well recently in light of the circumstances around my life, you know. And so has A Course in Miracles, and so have you, because that's what happens when you become determined to find the truth for yourself. The truth will surround yourself with teachers, with guideposts, with markers, with material, with studies, with experiences to help keeping you going. You said a very interesting thing there. You said what we do when we hold this guilt card for someone else is we slow our own progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're doing. And just to be clear, anything that we're talking about, as far as all the things we don't know about, including betrayal, we don't know, right? But I think a lot of times there's this, perception that when you're dealing with things on the spiritual plane, that it's all ethereal and it's all like, very hard to quantify and very hard to evaluate. And I would like to call bullshit on that. Bullshit. Because exactly what you were just saying, if you have really changed your mind, how are you going to see it? In your life, in the people who are come into your life and the opportunities that are presented to you. The whole fact of I'm not a victim of the world I see, it's saying that your life, the way it is right now, is a reflection of your consciousness. And there's going to be some really awesome things where you're like, heck yeah, look at that job. Heck yeah, look at this relationship. But I know I came to that really stark realization once in A Course in Miracles class when my teacher Raj said, the people in your life are a reflection of the love that you think you deserve. And I was like, ugh. At the time.
Right.
And this was a number of years ago. But at the time, I was like, that's not a good look. I need to change my mind about loving myself. And the amount of loving people who have entered my life immediately from making that decision. I'm talking about within a couple of months, 2 months, I made that decision. I made some big life choices based on that awareness that day. Within a month, I had moved. And I was in a house that I loved. I was studying A Course in Miracles every week, which was another reflection of my decision to change my mind. And then I started more and more and more being surrounded by people who I love and who really reflected that I loved myself because they loved and valued and appreciated me. And that's what you deserve in your life. And if that's not the case, then you got to change your mind about yourself.
And you cannot get there until you accept that everything in your life is a reflection of you, especially the things that bug you the most. And those are the things that are asking for love. Everything is asking for your love. And if you give anything your judgment, then you've got a lesson coming. If you give anything a sense of control, you've got a lesson coming,
Yeah.
And the lesson is okay. Betrayal may free you from somebody that's actually really not good for you, And so if you get stuck into betrayal and poor me and all the rest of it, well, your next partner is going to be the same as that partner because you haven't learned the lesson yet. The lesson is love. It's always love. It's very simple. It's love. And it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean...
Although, really, I think we find that it is easier because it's like, oh, I'm at peace. Oh, there's no conflict here. Yeah. Oh, but it's like the idea is that it might take some work to get there, right? But once you're there, you realize this is the easy way to go. Oh, yeah, love is a lot easier than fear, justification, blame, anger, manipulation, triangulation, whatever way it wants to show up. That's a confusing game that also doesn't work.
And it goes away when you love yourself.
Yeah.
Or if it comes up, you use it in a way that it actually makes you stronger. And I think that's the very interesting thing that happens after betrayal. You have an opportunity to get stronger or to become more divided in yourself.
Yes.
And if you hold on to the betrayal and you hold on that you're a victim and somebody else actually has control over you emotionally, you know, I'm not saying these things don't come up and they aren't feeling very, very real to your situation, but you can move beyond them by accepting these new beliefs and the responsibility.
Yeah, and I was speaking with someone earlier today who was, you know, struggling with a lot of anger, you know, and as a side note, both you and I do, you know, coaching, do counsel, do, you know, like work with people on an individual basis to apply the sort of principles that we're talking about to individual life scenarios. Is the answer the same? Yes. Right? It's like the truth is the same, the answer is the same, but there's different ways to apply it to different situations so that we can learn how to generalize them. So, you know, I think a lot of times with, you know, different kind of coaching plans, it's like, okay, it's individualized to you. It's going to be specific to your specific forms of fear, but is the answer anything different than what we're talking about here? No.
It really isn't. It's always the same.
Yeah.
It's always the same.
It's the same. And that's the thing, is the goal with, you know, that sort of practice, or if you choose to work with somebody individually, is to simplify things that are seeming so complex and so big and so astronomical, and then to realize it's a special form of fear, but the solution isn't any different. But there are things you can do that are helpful. And so when I was speaking to this person who was experiencing a lot of anger at herself and a lot of anger about a mistake that she had made, I just asked her, I said, tell yourself the truth even if you don't believe it. Tell yourself the truth. Tell yourself the loving thing, even if right now you're in an insane part of the mind that wants you to stay angry, wants you to stay miserable, wants to be wrong. Tell yourself the truth, and it can be as simple, you know, I asked the person to say, I want to release this anger at myself. And 90% of this person didn't believe that the anger wanted to be released. But as soon as she actually repeated it back to herself, you know, which I asked her to do, to repeat it to herself, tears just started coming out. Crying just started coming out, because it was the idea of, why is it that I want to punish myself? And we've all been there. We've all been there. But tell yourself the truth even if you don't believe it. I'm invulnerable. I can't be betrayed. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I don't care if you believe it. Your understanding is not a powerful contribution to the truth. But what I can say is that you will feel better just saying it, because it's loving and because it's the truth.
And that's determination, is to pause and catch yourself. The first thing that has to happen is you have to recognize that your mind is making up a story that is not true. Until that happens, until you've created some separation between your thought processes and can become the observer to them, you know, the blind rage, the continual mind tripping, which, you know, I didn't even understand there was a me versus a mind until I was 30 years old, and all of a sudden this whole other world, I got a glimpse of it. And it's like,
Saturn
wow.
return. No, just kidding.
Right, that's exactly right. You know, but it really, it's amazing. It's amazing once you can observe the mind and you realize that, you know, it's like this coffee cup. If I had it welded to my hand and it never came off, it would just be a part of me. Maybe not welded, but you know what I mean. But once you recognize, oh, this isn't really a part of me, oh, that's just like the thinking that's going on in here. I can set that down and it doesn't have to be a part of me anymore. And so we have to see that we aren't the mind, in terms of we are the spark, we are divine nature, and really begin to open that little teeny tiny space that's in there. And what we recognize is that we've had the process reversed the whole time. We've had the mind telling us what was going on in the experience of life, rather than the mind serving the experience of life. And if we can get the mind to serve the experience of life, then all of a sudden we can see that there is nothing to forgive, that there is no such thing as betrayal, that it is shame wearing a mask, that the answer really is love.
It's like everything is a tool or a weapon, even if we look at the body, right? We can use the body as this tool that we're able to go hiking with, that we're able to share communion with another person with, that we're able to, you know, and it's like, and it's a communication device, and we can use it to say really loving things, to create powerful connections, to learn, to, you know, it's like, as far as to go to places where we can learn, it's like, you know, we can take the body to all those places, or the body can be a weapon. We can abuse it in certain ways that then make our experience in this life more challenging. We can use it to attack other people, whether it be through words or through actions or guns or whatever the case may be. And so it's like, oh, the body in and of itself is this neutral thing. What am I using it for? Right. Is it a tool or is it a weapon? And it's the same thing is true about the mind as well, which is like, what am I using my mind on behalf of? Right. Am I using it on behalf of love or behalf of fear? Because those are two completely different experiences. Even if everything looks the same on the outside, the facts might be the same, but your interpretation of it are going to completely change your experience of the world and the people around you. Right.
When was it that you became aware that you weren't your thinking?
You know, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know if I could pinpoint it to a specific time. I think the first book that started to illuminate that for me was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which I believe I read like 10 years ago. So I was probably around like 19, the first time that thought really got introduced. But if we're all honest, you know, I think with ourselves, or we take just one step back, you don't necessarily have to read a book. You can see how something happens and it seems to be external to you, and all of a sudden your mood and your outlook and your interpretation of the situation changes in a split second. Yeah. In a split second, you were just happy, and then you made a mistake at work, or something happened, you got some news that you didn't like, or you looked at your bank account, who knows, you know, the form of it might be different. And then
something
all of a sudden,
on the outside made you change how you felt on the inside.
Yeah, but or appeared to.
Appeared to. Right.
Appeared to.
Right.
And that's really where it's like, oh, okay, all of a sudden, nothing has really changed. It's still 70 degrees outside. It's still whatever the case may be externally. But I found out this piece of information, and suddenly my whole outlook and my whole attitude upon life has changed suddenly. And it's like, oh, what was the meaning that I gave to that? And a lot of times we think, oh, I can move quickly from this state of peace and well-being into this state because of something outside of myself, and then I'm stuck there. But every action has an equal reaction. We could choose again and go right back to there, because the only thing that changed was our mind.
Right. It's our interpretation.
Yeah.
It's our perception. It's our perception. Okay, let's take just a quick pause, because we got a lot happening here at the River House today. Yeah. And I think we've given everybody enough stuff on betrayal.
Yeah.
Sorted out. You got a good...
But I do, yeah.
Have a good ACIM...
I always choose a random number generator, but while I'm doing that, do you want to...
Shuffle the cards. The Universal Folk Oracle. I haven't seen this one before.
Yeah, I just got this new. It's new.
All right, I'll put my little magic touch on them while you give us the lesson for the day.
Okay. So, and I use the random number generator, but I say this every time, but it's ridiculous how much it's aligned with whatever our topic happens to be. So this is the Sacrifice of Oneness, and it's in chapter 26, the transition. Section 1, the sacrifice, quote unquote, of oneness. So the world that we see is based on the sacrifice of oneness. It is a picture of complete disunity and a total lack of joining. Around each entity, meaning each one of our bodies basically, is built a wall so seemingly solid that it looks as if what is inside can never reach outside, and what is out can never reach and join with what is locked away within the wall. So it's true, our bodies look solid. What's inside could never reach outside. I'm never able to reach to what's inside of you. And so each part must sacrifice the other part to keep itself complete. For if they joined, each one would lose its own identity, and by their separation are their selves maintained. And so that's totally a picture of what happens with betrayal, right? Is that idea of I want to keep myself, my sense of separated self, and so I don't want to join with you. I want to be better than, less than. What card did we get?
What episode are we on?
22.
And what are we talking about?
Betrayal.
What's my name?
Mystery.
So we got card number 22, Mystery, Revelations, Discovery, Secrets, and Unveil.
Wow. Well, here we go. Can you guys see it?
Let's see. Can we make this?
22, Mystery. So let's see what it wants to say, which is perfect for Scorpio full moon.
A great mystery is always there, just waiting to be discovered. No need to look for something that is always present. The woman stands by the banks of Loch Ness in Scotland within view of the majestic castle. She is contemplating the mysteries that lie beneath the waters there, and like many before her, she is drawn to the idea of the great mystery to be discovered. Our legends and lore become a beautiful metaphor for uncovering the secrets of life while absorbing experiences for ourselves. A small, shimmering, milky piece of selenite helps connect to the oneness and the possibility of everything. Every great mystery or revelation hides in everyday view, ready to be discovered under the still waters of life and the quiet passing of the clouds. Stop seeking, analyzing, and labeling for a while, even for a moment. You will be very surprised at all the revelations that present themselves in the stillness.
In the stillness.
Yeah. Anna says, yes, I call it the not
ever random number generator.
Well, no matter what number it lands on, it lands on the truth.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, that's true. The not ever random number generator. I love that saying with it, though. That's great.
Oh, so here we are at number 22. How about that? Wow.
Yeah, we're on episode 22. So, I mean, and we've missed, I think 2 weeks since we've started, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
and
so if you guys don't know,
that's like 6 months we've been doing this, and we've only been we realized on the 22nd that we met 8 months ago, and so I cannot believe we started this thing within like 2 months of meeting.
I know.
How weird is
and
that?
If you have been following our gosh, what do we call it? Our connection. We relate on the lunar cycle. So if we get to the first of the end of one lunar cycle, and we're both an absolute yes, then we're in it for one lunar cycle. That's our commitment to it, and we're committed to growing, and we're committed to ourselves, and then we go all the way through. And then once you get past the third quarter, you get to a new perspective after the letting go, after the full, and you begin to open up about what have I learned in this lunar cycle? And then you get to the next piece, which is open to receive, which is you really get the wisdom for it, And then after...
And you can share it.
And you can
both
share
of you are able to receive what the other person has to say more receptively.
And then when you get to the end of it, if there's something that's unresolved in the relationship, you can resolve it and not carry it to the next one. Or if it's unresolvable, which we came to a situation a couple of months ago, where there was something that was pointing to both of us stepping back and doing some personal work, and oh wow, did we call that one right?
Yeah.
And then we came back last lunar cycle in a yes, and it seems
this past one that we're, and then I mean, and if you were here two weeks ago, I think it was like on Saturday, and I think
we weren't sure yet.
No.
Yeah, we weren't sure yet. Yeah, right.
And so we and the thing is that our connection and our communication had changed form for a lunar cycle, but it didn't mean it was gone. It didn't mean we weren't committed to we don't know. It didn't mean we weren't committed to loving one another, seeing one another's innocence. All of those things still stayed intact. It's not that if we, took the lunar cycle off that it's like, okay, and now we're off of innocence, transparency, and commitment, because we're doing this with each other so that we can generalize it to everything and everyone else in our lives. That's how love is meant to extend. Yeah. That's how it's meant to extend.
And we're learning. I mean, we're learning, and we're so committed to our own growth that the learning process, just does an amazing, amazing thing to our collective psyche, and we know that the impact it's having on us then bleeds out and has impact on everyone around us. And That's what A Course in Miracles teaches. And what I'm saying about now is we become a living, breathing example of the holy relationship and what happens to the people in our field when we practice these tenets. And that's the most exciting thing I want to share with people is that, wow, the change that has happened in my reality because of what you and I have put together and what we experience and what we practice together is, I'm speechless in all.
Spectacular,
Right.
Yeah. It's really empowering.
Yeah.
Personally empowering. And then obviously we get to show ourselves the contrast and just to, it's interesting to go from the ego-based relationship, which is separate interests, right or wrong, who gets to be better or worse, who's the good guy versus the bad guy, it's like to go from those sort of dynamics, which the world, you could go on YouTube right now and find a million ways to manipulate, to win, to get someone back for what they did to you, to make someone start chasing you, like all these games. We're totally conditioned to do a bunch of games, and one of the things that if you get committed to embarking on this journey, whether it's to heal a relationship that's already going on and you can see that it's like you appear to be on separate teams, which isn't working, because it never will in a relationship that's meant to bring a unified purpose, or whether you're wanting to embark on it with new dynamics that you come to, we've had to get used to the fact that, and I'll just speak for myself, but I feel like you've shared this as well, that it feels different than it has in the past, and there's something that can be very disarming about that in really positive ways, and there's things that can be disarming about that in ways that can create a little bit of confusion, which is, wait, I'm not going through these highs and lows. Wait, it's not super anxiety
I'm not
inducing.
yearning for this person like I have in other relationships. I don't want to see them and text them all the time like I did in other, which is freeing, and it's like, oh wow, this is really different.
Yeah, it is different. And I use, what I gave myself, it's like anxiety. It's easy to confuse anxiety, which is just a word for how fear expresses itself in a person, right? Like anxiety and passion. It's very easy to see those as the same thing, and you see it depicted in all sorts of movies and all sorts of shows.
Right.
What I love about A Course in Miracles is it says actually love is consistency.
Yeah.
It's constancy. It's consistent. It's someone who's devoted to preserving your innocence.
Yeah.
Like that's going to look different than on and off, conflict, irritation, shutting people out, push and pull, run and chase. And by the way, we're not saying that we do any of this perfectly yet. We are working we're developing a holy relationship.
Yeah.
But for me, it's certainly been a lot more even keel than other dynamics.
Almost so even keeled that we wonder, like, what's really happening here.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I'm noticing a lot of people walking on the property, opening doors, want to know what we're up with and whatnot. So many blessings to all of you out there. Thank you for watching. Meghan and I both do individual coaching, and we have a program that we are currently is underway, and look for it on the riverhouseuniverse.com. We also have an empowerment class there. We'd love for you to have us join that, and reach out to each one of us if you feel so inclined.
All right, we'll see you guys next time. Feel free to leave a comment of what type of topics you would be interested in seeing in the future.
Yeah.
And remember, you are loved, you are loving, and you are lovable.